This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for June 24th, 2025 at 6 o'clock. And if we can stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Great. Well, we have a rather hot one tonight. This is the coolest place to be in town, I think. Anyway, we have a quorum. Dan may be joining us, I'm not sure. So do we have anybody here? Open time for the public? Seeing no one offhand. We do have a first presentation tonight. This is our, basically the annual update, is that correct? From Ty and Bond on our Southampton Stormwater Management Program. So we have both Kelly and Haley here, so feel free to take the podium and walk us through whatever, and just make sure the mic is on, I think. The little green light's on at the bottom?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
You should be good. If you need to turn it, you can move it the way you want to. But, well, I don't know about that. But
Yeah, that's probably a little bit better. Okay, so this is your annual stormwater program update. I'm Kelly Crumrine, I'm the project manager, and this is Haley. She is the planner and does a lot of the field work.
Yep.
Not for this site, but
you may need to
mostly.
put that down just a little
Okay.
bit so it's pointed at you. There you go. There you go.
Yep.
Perfect.
The purpose of this presentation is to provide an update on Southampton's ongoing stormwater management program. We'll go over what you did in permit year 7, which is ending at the end of this month, and planned activities for permit year 8, and a look ahead to future permit year requirements. Also solicit any feedback you might have on your stormwater program. What is stormwater? Rainfall that falls on paved surfaces and lawns becomes stormwater. If it doesn't soak into the ground, it heads for the nearest storm drain. Storm drains feed to outfalls that dump stormwater into waterways. When stormwater picks up trash or chemicals, that's stormwater pollution. Stormwater pollution is the fastest growing type of water pollution in Massachusetts. This is just more. You can see the storm drains. 40% of known pollution is caused by stormwater to the nation's waters. Typical pollutants include trash, oil, fertilizers, sediment, sand, and bacteria. EPA's small MS4 stormwater program. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's a program jointly administered by EPA and Mass DEP. And Southampton's MS4 area includes all drainage within the urbanized area, which is not very big here in Southampton.
Yeah, I think we talked about that last year. It's like, where is the urbanized area in Southampton?
Yeah, the little red hatched areas in basically the corners and that little thing coming up from the bottom.
Yep.
Your notice of intent under the 2016 small MS4 general permit was submitted September 28th, 2018. You received the authorization to discharge stormwater on April 5th, 2019, with an expiration date of June 30th, 2022. The permit was administratively continued on May 16th, 2022, until a new permit is issued. The stormwater management plan was finalized July 1st, 2019, and it's updated annually. To date, they have not issued a new permit. Just still me. Okay. What is in your stormwater management plan? There are minimum control measures. The first one is public education and outreach. Second, public involvement and participation. 3, illicit discharge detection and elimination program. 4, construction site stormwater runoff control. 5, stormwater management and new development and redevelopment, and 6, good housekeeping and pollution prevention.
So Southampton has some impaired waterways, and that does impact some elements of the MS4 general permit. For example, you are within the Connecticut River watershed, which drains ultimately to the Long Island Sound, and that has a total maximum daily load for nitrogen. Additionally, there are a few other water bodies that have a total maximum daily load, and that includes Pequot Pond and the Manhan River. And both of those are, both of those are impaired for E. coli, and Pequot Pond is impaired for phosphorus, which means that any outfalls that discharge to Pequot Pond or within the general vicinity of its watershed also need to be tested for phosphorus in addition to nitrogen. So for some of the public education and outreach, you have joined PVPC, which is the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. They have a Connecticut River Stormwater Committee, and so you pay them essentially like a membership fee, and they handle all of your annual messaging. But in addition, I know that Randall is very on top of any updates to your stormwater, and tends to share additional messaging as he comes across it or as it's relevant to the town. For public involvement and participation, your stormwater management plan is available online. You also have a National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but that factors into some of the requirements by the new draft of the permit that may be finalized. You also have a town rain barrel program, and this annual public meeting counts for your public involvement and participation, even though there are not many people participating.
There may be people watching, you never know.
And I have been involved with your illicit discharge detection and elimination program. We actually finished it back in permit year 5, which was in 2022, but you have done all 3 phases. So your dry weather outfall screenings were completed in 2020, which was permit year 2. Your dry weather catchment investigations were not required or possible under the guidelines of the permit because the area within your urbanized area actually didn't have any key junction structures, which are labeled as 2 or more systems entering into the same structure. All the systems you have are very small and isolated, so that didn't apply to you at all. And then your wet weather outfall screenings, technically that only occurs if the outfall has a system vulnerability factor, and those are outlined within the permit. And technically Southampton didn't have any of those either. However, there were a few outfalls that had dry weather flow in dry conditions, which means that they had flow that wasn't necessarily stormwater. It might have been groundwater, and so those were instead sampled.
Okay, so you also do construction site and post-construction stormwater management. No application reviews, inspections, or violations requiring enforcement actions were needed in permit year 7 for the compliance with stormwater bylaw. Continued project review under bylaw and enforcement activities as needed. Municipal stormwater retrofit inventory. So the town maintains a list of some properties in your MS4 area for stormwater BMP retrofits. There were some storm scepters installed on the East Street Bridge. And then the town has selected Conant Park on Clark Street to install the demonstration BMP retrofit. We're currently in the permit level design drawings. We're at about 40%. And the notice of intent is also being prepared. So we did part of it last year, and then we're just continuing on into the next permit year. When I say last year, I meant 7, going to 8.
So with the NOI, will you end up going to Conservation Commission?
Yes, yep. So some good housekeeping and pollution prevention for permittee-owned operations. You have implementation of good housekeeping SOPs, annual requirements, enhanced requirements due to impaired waters, and record keeping, which you do a pretty good job at all those things that you
Yeah.
are required to do.
Randall is very much on top
Randall
of
is
it.
very much on top of it. That's nice because it's helpful. So these are some planned permit year 8 activities. I know it looks like a lot, but it's just basically what you're doing now. Nothing has really
A little bit
changed.
bigger? I don't know if we can see that any better, but a lot of information there.
Yeah, it's just really all that you're doing already. You've done all your field component, so it's record keeping, public involvement, you know, your site plan reviews, annual reports.
Annual training, any maintenance of your catch basins and manholes through the DPW. Yeah, I mean, we kind of include this list to show how much you're doing. Not necessarily for it all to be completely legible, because it is just kind of repeating everything we already talked about.
Excuse me. Which of them would you highlight as particularly addressing E. coli or phosphorus?
Sure. So really the point of noticing E. coli and phosphorus is we're trying to see when we visit your outfalls whether or not any of that is being sourced from your stormwater system, and therefore is being sourced from septic systems that aren't functioning the way that they should, or from sewer lines that are contaminating the stormwater in some way. So in Southampton, we really haven't found evidence of that. However, in any cases where we found like some elevated results, I mean, it's really hard to also control for things like non-point source pollution, or even
Geese on the pond?
could you repeat that?
Geese on Pequot Pond?
Oh, it absolutely could be coming from geese. It might even be coming from fertilizers that people are using on their lawns. And so some of your annual messaging actually goes to targeting some of that. So I think like pet waste is a pretty big contributor of E. coli as well. And so the annual messaging that you pay to the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, they send messages to residents through social media, through mailings, through flyers, all addressing better ways to dispose of things like pet waste, or better times of year to like fertilize their lawns, or what types of fertilizers to use so that it isn't contaminating your stormwater. I think so.
Okay. So planned permit year 8 activities. Continue with your annual messaging. Like we said, you are involved in that committee that kind of does it for you, so you don't have to think too much, but also Randall's very good at it as well. Focus on messages for developers and industrial facilities. So you have that around here. Public involvement and participation. Continue to make your SWIP available online for public review and comment as it's updated, and consider other safe ways to involve public and stormwater in your stormwater program.
So for your illicit discharge detection and elimination program, you have successfully completed all of your field work and all of your sampling efforts. However, like as those were completed, I think we did get a couple of hits that were high in chlorine. And actually Randall did some investigation and found that there were water main leaks in those areas and did work to plug those. So at the moment, you definitely benefited from getting that data and getting that knowledge, but at the moment there isn't anywhere else to go. So it really is just continuing to train your employees at the DPW for signs of any illicit discharge going into the sewer, going into the storm drain, and being able to recognize it, identify it, and eliminate it if possible. For your bylaws, you're going to continue tracking your site plan reviews and inspections and continue enforcement of your bylaw. It is up to date with the requirements in Massachusetts and as per the 2016 MS4 general permit. So one of the other things, like as we start nearing permit year 10, which is the end of the permit, there was a report created that actually went through all of your local code and addressed ways that you can better allow for residents to implement things like rain barrels or other green solutions, allow them to have like a rain garden on their property. And so we have submitted that report to you. And I don't believe you're expected to do anything with it until closer to permit year 10. So it is just kind of there for consideration as that deadline approaches. And then for your good housekeeping and pollution prevention, a lot of what I just said on the last slide. You're going to maintain your annual requirements. You're going to maintain your good housekeeping standard operation procedures, and your record keeping, and keep up to date on any signs of a potential illicit discharge. In addition, for your impaired waters requirements, we did prepare a nitrogen and phosphorus source identification report back in permit year 4. The point of that was to do a desktop review of your topography and your land use, and to try to identify potential catchments. So essentially the watershed area of your MS4 systems, and try to identify which ones would have the potential highest nutrient loadings, so that we could identify municipal properties for retrofit opportunities for BMPs, such as rain gardens or detention basins, so that that water can be treated before it gets discharged into the environment. And so through that, and in conjunction with your bylaw, on any new projects, when you hit a certain amount of impervious surface being created, they will be required to incorporate some kind of retrofit activity or development on the property so that it doesn't burden your stormwater system.
So Southampton is actively meeting the MS4 requirements. Your permit year 7 annual report will be submitted to the EPA and DEP by September 28th, 2025. Looking ahead, you will continue with annual reporting, maintenance, inspection, and data tracking. Permit year 10 has to complete all your MS4 mapping and catchment investigations, which are completed. And then any new MS4 permit requirements are to be determined. However, they did issue a draft permit, and they did have one round of public comments, I believe.
Yeah.
But that kind of stalled, and
So in year 10, there's supposed to be a new permit?
well, it was supposed to be in 2022.
Yeah.
And then they said, oh, we'll just continue the old permit. And there was talk of one, they issued a draft one in 23 or 24? Okay, 24, yep, and then, they were supposed to continue on with it, but it kind of stalled out with the,
Okay.
I have a question. The draft plan is specific to Southampton, or is it?
no, that's like all the MS4.
All the small?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's statewide.
Yep.
And so we have a few slides discussing the 2024 draft permit.
These are not
I could go.
in stone, these are just draft proposed
Yeah.
requirements.
So they released the 2024 draft permit in November. They had been trying to release something since 2022, so this was already a few years late. And so let's get into it. So some of the changes, and specifically how they apply to Southampton, is the MS4 urbanized area is being updated to the 2020 census information. Currently it's using the 2010 information. And so you can see that some of it has increased within Southampton, but it is still a pretty small area comparatively. For public education and outreach, the requirements are pretty similar. However, it does have an addition of interactive public education efforts with language translation. And so it specifically mentions active and interactive messages, and they want to allow for a two-way flow of information, and they want it to be engaging, inspire immediate calls to action, and or encourage audience participation. However, they really haven't set any specific requirements as to how to do that yet. So it is still very much up in the air. They also asked every community to determine the top 3 non-English languages within their MS4 based on Massachusetts environmental justice languages spoken mapping. I included a picture of that on the slide for Southampton. As you can see, there are no other mapped languages in Southampton, so I'm not sure that this requirement actually applies to you. And even if it does, the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission will likely continue its program. And so whatever messaging they prepare, I assume will have translation services. And so if you require something in Spanish or any other language, hopefully they will be able to manage that for you. For your construction and post-construction, it's largely the same requirements, but if anything gets updated, they will likely require you to adopt any local code updates statewide, which I think is pretty typical for how the permit runs. For impaired waters and total maximum daily loads, any additional nutrient and bacteria total maximum daily loads that were finalized after 2016 will be incorporated. We keep up to date with the impaired waters list already, so I don't think this impacts you that greatly either. And then just for some of the technical details, the new notice of intent would be due within 90 days, and the stormwater management plan would need to be redone instead of updated, and so that would be due 1 year after the permit effective date. There would be a $500 filing fee, and it would be electronic reporting, both for the NOI and for your annual reports, which is already the case for your annual reports. For your IDDE program, it basically just restates that you need to meet the 2016 permit schedule for completing all of your catchment investigations, which, as we discussed earlier, you have already completed, so it doesn't have any additional requirements, but it does ask that you continue any like field data or updating your system mapping as necessary. For any of the water quality benchmark levels that we test when we go into your stormwater system, they did reduce the benchmark for ammonia. It was 0.5 milligrams per liter. They're reducing it to 0.1 milligrams per liter. I don't think this changes very much within Southampton. Your testing was relatively low, especially for ammonia. And it may have a new consideration for EPA-generated data, including pharmaceuticals and personal care products. And we're not entirely sure what that sampling parameter is going to look like yet, or how that's going to be incorporated. I believe many people have asked for further clarification on that element of the permit. And speaking of requesting clarification, they are also requesting clarification on where and how changes for ranking and defining any illicit parameters apply for communities that are significantly complete with their IDDE program. So again, you're 100% complete. So, you know, if they're lowering benchmarks for ammonia, or if you had any illicit discharges or suspected ones, which you don't, how to go about like ranking to determine like how to disconnect those. Again, this largely doesn't apply, and we're mostly just asking for clarification on like, what are your next steps now that you have already completed this? For your Good Housekeeping program, they have asked that each community develops a more formal drainage system asset management program to track your different MS4 structures and establish your mapping. It asks that this is established within 2 years for critical assets. And the biggest element of this for a lot of communities is that there is a catch basin upgrade and replacement prioritization program. And it asks that the program be developed within 1 year, and it prioritizes catch basins that do not comply currently with the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, which means catch basins that do not have a deep sump and hood. And it asks that 20% of catch basins in need of an upgrade be upgraded to have the deep sump and hood within 5 years. Southampton doesn't have an expansive stormwater, it doesn't in town. So this likely isn't a massive lift for you if this does get finalized, but this is very controversial for communities that have much larger stormwater infrastructure within them. So it's probably one of the most heavily debated parts of the permit currently. It is also going to have some more stringent requirements for your catch basin cleaning. It's going to ask that you prioritize areas that flood during major storms, drain backwater to sewer, and it is also going to ask that in your asset management program, you track the sump depth, the percent full, the volume material removed, and whether it is in or outside of flood zone for each of the catch basins cleaned. Some of these you're already doing through your record keeping, so this isn't necessarily a major lift, but it is definitely a change. And lastly, so starting in year 2 of the 2024 permit, it would ask you to install a structural SCM, which is it's a terminology change from BMP, which is best management practice, to stormwater control measure, and it incorporates everything that I said earlier, like rain gardens, detention basins, anything that infiltrates and screens out some of the potential pollutants from the stormwater. And you would be asked to try to track nutrient removal, so to try to perform calculations on how much of the nutrient load is potentially being removed at each site, which is already a requirement of the permit currently. You would need to increase street sweeping to twice per year in spring and fall, which you are already doing. For winter road maintenance training, you would require, currently the permit says to encourage salt reduction methods, so using less salt for storms and relying on other forms of roadway maintenance. And lastly, consider addressing water quality impacts when implementing new flood management projects.
We
Are there
got
any
it.
questions?
I don't know. Any questions, Stephen? Anybody?
Keep us busy.
No, I mean, this is the things that I'm sure that Randall worry about more regularly than we do, but definitely he's got lots of paperwork I know that he knows that he has to do and has been very much on top of it so far. So thank you for coming and doing your annual review with us. Looks like we're pretty much on target, so we'll
Oh yeah, you're ahead of
going.
schedule.
Good. Well, glad to hear that at least. So, benefits of a small town, perhaps. Good. Well, thank you very much for coming.
All right. Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
me. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move without objection, take up the following appointments.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thomas Shista, Agricultural Commissioner, reappointment, 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2028. Robert Fletcher, Agricultural Commission, reappointment, 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2028. Lucy Dalton, Cultural Council, reappointment, 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2028. Stephen Cawley, Fence Viewer, reappointment, 1-year term to expire June 30th, 2026. Michael Bueller, Greenway Committee, reappointment, 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2028. And Jeanette Brown, Greenway Committee, reappointment, 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2028.
Okay. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All right. Any discussion, anybody? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All those appointments are in effect. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 appointments. So thank you. And we will get those updated on our website as well. So thanks for those that have decided to re-up their time on their committees. All right. Scott, Town Administrator report?
Not much has gone on the last week and a half, especially with the Juneteenth holiday taking up Thursday. So we are going to be meeting with the internal land use planning committee tomorrow to kind of decide the next steps. So.
Okay. All right. Any reports from any select board committees as assigned right now?
I just have, Norris will meet tomorrow night. It'll be the last school committee meeting of this cycle. We'll reorganize at the conclusion of that meeting. Then we will, they will be prepared for Monday night's special meeting on the transfers to answer the questions related to that.
So someone will be there from the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good. That'd be great.
And they'll be ready to speak this time.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Yeah, all right. Good. Stephen, anything?
Housing Authority met, and they continue to refine their thoughts about what would be a good fit at Zero College Highway. They're eager to re-engage with that. And the property that the town purchased on College Highway further south is almost ready to go out for a bid.
They're working on the RFP or RFQ?
Yes,
Yeah.
whatever terminology.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great.
Scope of service, I think. Open Space Committee meets tomorrow night, and I think it's still up in the air if we're going to pursue a land grant this year.
Yeah, that was still iffy when I last knew about it, too. Okay.
That's what I got.
All right, and from my end, Bylaws Committee will meet probably not for another week or 10 days, given the holidays and people's availability, but we're working on the scenic roads bylaw still, and we'd like to involve both Randall and Ron Lauren in that, since they would have some level of enforcement on that. So once we set a meeting date, we'll be sure that they get involved. And the grant committee is meeting to work on the park grant, and this is basically reviving, the applications due on the 8th of July, and so we have been in touch to see how we could potentially finish off the earlier project, which was to install the spray deck at Conant Park and do the walking path. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll get the application done by the 8th to have money to finish the project. I think that's all we have at the moment from those committees. Master plan had to postpone, and we are rescheduling that meeting, so we will get there. All right, new business. Water overtime policies. God, I know you had had some drafts at the last meeting, I think, and you had suggested some language that didn't seem to make the most.
So is this the second draft? The second version, or?
I talked to Brett yesterday, and he said that there was another draft circulating around the Water Commission that I have not been given yet.
So do we want to just put this on the table?
Well-
My only comment on this is,
Make that a little bit.
this is what I believe, I mean, there's a certain section in here about, well, shall be considered on call, but my memory from QPP is the way I read this is, and I guess that's one big sentence in the first one. But towards the end, same person shall be compensated for a minimum of 4 hours overtime at a rate of 1.5 the employee's straight time for any work performed in excess of 40 hours for that week. I would interpret that to mean, and then I believe this is where the water superintendent and I had a disagreement. My reading of that is it's actual hours worked. So I would argue that if somebody took a sick day in the middle of that 40-hour week, it's not, but it doesn't say that. And I believe their intent was, regardless of whether you took a sick day or a vacation day, you got the time and a half. And that's where it first broke down. So to me, 40 hours that week, in excess of 40 hours, I would interpret that to mean actually worked. I would offer, if we're going to act on this, I would amend that, say 40 hours of actual work.
I think is this the language, pretty much, this was your proposal to counteract what had been put in the draft, I think, from the water commissioners. And I think that was the intent, that if you had taken vacation time or sick time or whatever during that week, that you weren't automatically going to use all of that and then
You should get
also be compensated. Yeah.
You should get straight time.
Straight time, right.
Not the time and a half.
Right. I think so. That would be the normal procedure. I mean, you wouldn't get credit for all that if you were on leave, et cetera. You would have had to work that week in order to get that credited.
Madam Chair, the water commissioners met, and I was out of town. So I've not had an opportunity to hear the full conversation that's gone on this, or whether there may be a new version. But
Okay.
what I did hear passionately is that in order to attract and retain employees, what is comparable to other communities in their research and experience and evaluation is that it's not just hours actually worked, but it's any paid hour. So if it's paid vacation, paid medical, this is the environment that they think they're competing in for employees. I can say not much more than that.
Yeah, okay. I think the draft that we had seen at one point, which is right prior to this, maybe, the last meeting, was that a lot of language in there sounded like it was very union-oriented. And we are not unionized here, and I believe they might have used some of that language from other communities that perhaps have a unionized DPW or something like that that is bigger than us. But that's why some of that language just didn't seem to fit right for Southampton in terms of a variety of things. But Scott, go ahead with your thoughts.
I mean, I think in the last year, they've been able to recruit a new water superintendent. They've been able to recruit several qualified candidates for the water technician job. So I think that the fact that they're saying that they can't recruit and retain people when they've hired 2 positions out of 3 in the last year might be a little bit of a...
I think the other issue, it's not an issue, but the concern is, and that's why this policy, this looks like what came from PPB. Well, because we had the expiration to expire December 30th, 2025, not to run indefinitely, because the PPP recognized that this was really, we were viewing this as an emergency situation, because in essence, the technician is working 365 days. The water superintendent does not work Saturday and Sunday. He's Monday through Friday, and the hourly employee does their 5-day work week. Then they do the Saturday and Sunday. And I believe with the exception of when he was away for his wedding, we've got one employee that's out there working 365 days consecutively until they hire
Till they get
a person, and then they're able to alternate off back and forth.
Yeah, they can reschedule that. I mean, you can have somebody for a Tuesday to Saturday position or whatever. You can.
My esteemed colleague here to my left, who is also a commissioner now, probably try and encourage the recruitment and selection of a third candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we, I mean, do we want to wait until you've had a chance to meet with the water commissioners and get, if there is yet another policy floating around? I mean, we haven't seen it. We had gotten one that they seemed to have approved when Joe was still on the commission, and then this was your reaction, I believe, Scott, to what was in there that didn't seem to, this was your suggested language that counteracted some of what we saw in the policy that they had tried to put forward last time. So,
and we've got at least
we can put
skinny feedback from the water superintendent, right? That the expiration date was problematic in his view, and clarifying what we've gone over and over again, the different view about what is time worked.
But since our last meeting, apparently, yet there's another version from them which we haven't seen yet. So I
didn't know that.
So I think, I don't know, are we okay to, again, postpone this?
Do we want to just tweak this and add in actual work and send this to them saying this is the version that we have?
Yeah.
Just to keep the process going? And
at least, I think that, at least for the first, in that first paragraph, I think that was what we had intended was.
Any work actually.
Yeah, actually performed. Any hours actually performed. Yeah.
Because who knows, maybe they'll see this and the commissioners will go along with it. And then we're done.
Well, I think this has been sent to Brett before, but whether they've had a chance to meet and talk about it, I don't know. Okay.
No, I think there's clarity about the opposing positions.
Yes.
I just think they are opposing.
So.
And maybe they've refined it further, so. I'm not opposed to going another round of
Okay, we'll postpone it until
paper.
next time around. We'll see what they do over the next couple of weeks, and we'll pick it back up again. So this is...
Which is not to disregard or dishonor their work. We rather want to make sure we include their latest.
Right, but if we're going to make a policy, let's make it so that it's not particular to today's situation, but we're making a policy that makes sense for whoever's in the position. We're not, trying to just accommodate certain things.
If that's the case, I move we lay this on the table.
Okay. All right. Can we have a second on that? We'll hold
Yes.
that. All right. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So we'll pick it back up again. All right. Thank you. All right. FY24 audit update. Mr. Scott. Oh, that wonderful long list of however many, 150 things?
I'm going to, there's a few things that I'm going to start working on later on this week, so I still want to maintain that June 27th. Bradley has submitted most of his things already. There are a few I got to follow up on, but other than that, he's going to be on schedule for the next batch, which is July 11th. I do have to follow up with Dave just on those last 2 items that he has to do, but other than that, he's going to be completed for the assessors. He just needs to do the receivables and the, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I'll have to defer to him. And then obviously the biggest part of that, the treasurer and collector part. So we're moving forward on the assessors, all the stuff that I can do, and all the stuff the accountant can do.
And remind me of the June 27th date. What were you saying there?
That was for my stuff, things like the collective bargaining agreements, the legal counsel, things like
Right.
just little things that I can put together.
Okay, all right. So we've got some stuff going in, but not the biggest chunk of what we need to get in, unfortunately, right? And that is, basically, all of that is things that only the treasurer collector can do, not any of her assistants that can pull it together? I mean, for the most part.
At this point, yeah. I mean, it would take a long time for someone just to go into there to decipher something that happened 2 years ago and to recreate all that stuff, especially like the cash books and things like that.
Okay. All right, well, as we've said, we'll keep this as an item on all of our select board meetings so that we know what the progress is going forward as we get things done. So I guess that leads us into, at this point though, with that, so the auditors haven't started anything yet until we get all of this in, or is that how that works, or?
Well, we're going to start uploading it. I'm sure they'll do some work, but a lot of the stuff, like, you know, the notes and the bank books from the treasurer side, it's going to be difficult to move forward.
Okay.
That's the biggest chunk of it.
Okay. All right. So with that, let's lead that right into the treasurer collector update and what's happening in terms of our treasurer collector, what we know, what contact we've had.
So I had talked to Jen on Saturday, brief phone call. I let her know that we would be sending a letter for her to appear at the select board meeting. She said don't bother, that she wouldn't be attending. So she did have a brief phone conversation with me. I stressed the importance again, as I have over the last month and a half, about getting a date for a resignation, which we do not have. So for the last 30 days, the office has been essentially in limbo. Whatever the plan is for a transition, it's not going to matter if there's not a date that we can move forward with. We can't hire anyone, we can't get any consultants, we can't get any firms in. You know, we can't say, oh, come work on July 7th, and we still have a treasurer collector there that doesn't have that can't share any of the information. So at this point, it is my understanding that she comes in at night sometimes. I know she's here now. She came in around 5, but I don't know about any consistency. But the issue is that from 9 to 5, we don't have the main financial person of the town to conduct any town business whatsoever for the public. So if there's a question on a tax bill, if a person comes in and needs to get a waiver, or if they want to waive the interest fee, it has to be done after hours. And everything's delayed at best 24 hours if we can get a response. Like the audit, we have not had a response from the treasurer to do anything yet after multiple emails. I talked to her on Saturday and asked for a date to resign. She said she might give it. I stopped by again before this meeting, and she said there was nothing confirmed that she would even resign. She said, I don't know when I'm going to give it.
Did we get any guidance or direction from KP Law yet?
Yeah, there's a few different routes. Let me bring up my thing. So the one thing that council did bring up was the
bigger Scott, sorry.
This part. This is Mass General Law. So the select board could, because the current treasurer collector does have another position with another town, a full-time position.
Full-time, yeah.
So they cannot perform any other duties for the town of Southampton while working for the town of Whately. So that would be a conflict. So in essence, that is an absence from the position. The select board could take a vote that the position is absent and move forward with appointing.
So that's section 40, but do you know what the MGL is?
Yeah, it is
42,
chapter 41.
140.
So that's one way. Obviously, there is a special town meeting and eliminating the salary for the position, and it would essentially be an unpaid position. We could involve some supervisory organizations like the Ethics or the Mass Treasurers Collectors Association, and make complaints through those organizations. None of those are quick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, ultimately, I do think the goal of the town should be to seriously look at making it an appointed position, so this doesn't happen in the future. An appointed position would have a contract. If they don't fulfill the contract, there's terms to terminate the person, and you can get someone in. As an elected official, it's a huge gray area.
But I also think it's becoming less and less common in the Commonwealth to have an elected treasurer collector these days.
That's true.
But that 4140 that was referenced there by KP Law, it says, the select board would basically declare the office absent. So to me, we would need to build a case for that before we could act on that. So I think next steps are in no particular order. We need to build a public record that we're trying to resolve this and validate that it's true, because if we go this route and say at the end of it we do, and we take a vote under 4140 and declare the office absent, and go and appoint somebody else, we potentially are going to end up with our current treasurer collector refusing to turn anything over, and then we're going to be before a Superior Court judge. So in my mind, I'm thinking we need to have our ducks in a row before
But we need
get there.
to try and avoid that, yeah.
So I think, for example, I think the board should vote to formally send a request to our treasurer collector, asking her to formally declare her date of resignation based on the fact that she has been accepted an appointment position in Whately for the same position that operates during the same hours that we're open. Simultaneously, I don't want to assume that she has actually started in Whately. I know it's on the webpage of the town page, but I haven't called to verify, and I don't think that's my role to do it. She could have some arrangement up there. So I think we should also send a formal request letter to the town administrator of Whately under a Freedom of Information Act, asking for validation or proof that, yes, she's been appointed because it's on the website, but she has actually started. Maybe there's a delay up there. Maybe she's not performing the duties right now. I don't know. But if she is, the time records, time slips, whatever support documents are entitled to that. And then, assuming that comes back in the affirmative, then again, I don't want to be the board. I don't want this body acting independently. I say at that point, we then we do a formal request to the state ethics to review if they believe a conflict of interest exists under MGL 268A, which Scott referred to earlier, when you're collecting compensation from two municipalities for work that's supposed to be performed at the same time.
Yeah.
That becomes a conflict. Simultaneously, now going along those lines, I believe all those things being true, we should exercise our authority and notify the Department of Revenue and Department of Local Services that we believe that the job is not being performed here, and therefore our audit is going to be impacted. Our cherry sheet, all our turnovers, all our year-end reports are going to be impacted, and put them on notice now that these are issues and concerns that we have. And
Yeah, sooner rather than later. I would agree with that, yeah.
And I think, and then pause, and then let's see what comes back. And if everything comes back, because right now it's all conversations outside of this board, and unfortunately, this board has to operate under open meeting law, so we independently can't go have conversations.
Right.
This is the only place we can have it. We did a formal request for the treasurer collector, another elected person, to come in before this elected body. So under the law, under the open meeting law, we can have a conversation. She declined our request. Okay, but we're trying everything within the law to
Well, and,
get settled and resolved. And
right. And the town administrator had put it in writing, was a request to come in for tonight, right? Was that a
Yeah,
conversation or was that
I
an
talked to
email?
her, I gave her notice that I'd be emailing it to make sure she checks her email, her town email. And then she texted, said she wouldn't be coming in, and then she called me on Saturday instead.
Okay. Yeah, because I think with this chapter 40, I mean, being able to work 2 full-time jobs at the same hours, and, I mean, essentially right now, she is technically collecting a paycheck from here, whether she's coming in 2 hours a week or not at all. We don't really have a way to know that, right? There's no key card at the door to know that somebody signed in. There's no time log thing that you have to sign in, et cetera, here for that job.
And I don't want to assume perhaps she's waiving her Whately pay. And I don't know. This is why we need to get all the
Yeah,
documents
get that
and ducks in a
clarity.
row.
All right, well, that sounds like at least more formal procedures. I mean, I think we've been trying to do this informally, just hopefully we can just, come to a meeting of the minds and have her leave on good terms and leave us with what we need to keep on moving forward with the audit for '24 in particular. But I guess I'm not understanding why the delay in putting any dates down, even if she wanted to continue doing some handover to the current staff that are there. I don't know how and when that could possibly happen, given that she's not available, unless she took a personal day from Whately. She's not even available to be here during work hours to work with Angie and Ann to hand anything over, so.
And are we expecting those hourly employees to come in at night? And if so, then we have a duty to pay them time.
Well, I
And
certainly
none of
wouldn't.
that's been approved, or we don't know.
No, I mean, I wouldn't have expected that. No, I wouldn't expect that. I mean, I think they have their normal work hours, and that's what it should be.
And then lastly, I would just suggest that we schedule tentatively a special meeting on Monday, July 14th, to take just this issue up. That gives a little over 2 weeks for all these other items to flow through,
To float in.
and then potentially have additional data points to act upon.
I concur with both of you. I certainly wish this was resolvable and amicable and efficient way, that the turnover is, thorough and responsible, and everyone leaves on good terms. But if that's not probable, we need to prepare ourselves.
Okay.
So I just want me to do that as a motion.
Yeah, I think we need to try to combine that as a motion if we
I'll
can.
make the following motion to do the
Formal.
five following items.
Okay.
First is to send a formal letter to the treasurer collector requesting that she declare her resignation date in writing in lieu of the fact that she appears to have accepted a similar position in the town of Whately. That we formally seek town council opinion on declaring the office vacant and withholding pay, and what those steps would be for guidance. That we request the state ethics review the conflict of interest under MGL 268A to determine independently whether or not a conflict has arisen. That we notify the DOR/DLS of our operational concerns. And lastly, that we send an official request for Freedom of Information Act to Town of Whately through its town administrator, seeking confirmation of the start date, actual hours performed, and such.
Does that actually have to be a Freedom of Information request, or can that be just a
Well,
regular?
that would, otherwise that town administrator isn't compounded to answer us.
I'm sure as a professional courtesy, he'd
I would think, I mean,
I would leave it to Scott to word it as he sees it.
Yeah, I would-
As long as it's in writing and traceable.
okay.
Could we also add the mass treasurers and collectors, as well as the
And then
potential ethics?
We also send a letter to the current president of the Mass Treasurers Collector, who just got elected last week. And that we,
Your cousin?
that we tentatively slate Monday, July 14th, 6 PM for a special meeting,
Special meeting just on this.
just on this issue.
Okay. Go back on one point you had on the GC. I didn't capture that one on the council.
Well, just two things. We have the email there saying we can declare the office absent. I would like to know next steps on withholding the pay, and to do that all together, just for guidance. I suspect that's going to require special town meeting vote. I don't think the select board can do it on its own, but I'd rather have our attorneys tell us, here's what you can do, what you can't do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a Pretty long list of a motion. Can we have a second, then any discussion?
Yes, second.
Second, Stephen? Okay, any thoughts and discussion? Ellen, any thoughts? This is all kind of new for you on the board here too, but feel free to chime in with questions you might have.
Yes. It's a little confusing as to why, not confusing, but head scratching as to why this issue even exists. I think going forward, I think that these steps, I do think that we need to be more
Formal, maybe?
about our approach to it. I think it's definitely time to move forward.
I think we've been trying,
And that we mean business, and we need.
Yeah, I think formalizing it is probably our next step. We've been trying to do it informally, but we're not making a lot of headway here, and time keeps flying by on us. And okay, so I think we have that. If no further comments, I'll take a vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, motion passes, thank you. So Scott, you and I can work together on a couple letters here and get this drafted before the end of the week, okay? All right, next up, if you want to, I don't know if you have it on your screen, the PSBC charge, right, okay. So this is not really for any decision tonight, but I just wanted to bring it up. Public Safety Building Committee is going to be meeting again on Monday the 30th, I believe. And as we were meeting, they were meeting last time, it occurred to everybody that basically the charge for the committee as it had been developed, Scott, you can make that just a little bit bigger, please, as it had been developed really has pretty much been fulfilled. So you can go ahead and scoot down. So it gets down into this of right around in there, or right up above. So yeah, maybe just a little bit above that. I don't know what's the one more? No, okay, right there. Yeah.
What is the meaning of the italics? That was not called
This was
out.
when it was amended. So it was originally the charge, and then it was amended up in the date up at the top of the first page. If you scroll all the way up. Yeah, I think it was, there was an original charge, and then it was amended
I see.
in March of, so it was amended later on in that same month as they rethought things in 2022, I believe, yeah. So the amendment, I believe, is the italics language. And that was when they took it one step further to go into the statement of work and the RFQ for the feasibility study, look for town buildings and, look for possible land, visit other facilities in other towns, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then determine the recommended size, layout, locations of public safety, and then maybe a couple more below that, Scott. Yeah. Work with the selected consulting firm, which has been HKT, obviously, and then determine the potential design and construction costs and report back. So that's essentially where things have gotten through already. So they're saying that, for them to move forward, they need to know what select board would like them to do. And so it's something that I would want to put back on the agenda for when we meet again. We do have a charge for the Senior Center Building Committee that's a little bit different than that, because theirs went through the whole OPM and architectural design stage on their charge. So theirs is still valid. They've got a couple of extra points on theirs already, which this one doesn't have. So we might take a couple of those to add or reformulate this charge.
When the Public Safety Committee met after the vote to discuss that, did they develop or could they develop next steps or action steps from their point of view on where they think this should go for us to be forefront of mind when we're considering adopting this charge?
I think we're kind of in a quandary, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, they had not determined any particular direction. We did have everybody in the committee kind of give their opinion about what they thought had happened at the ballot box, and then, what could we have done differently? What could we have done better? How could we have explained more, et cetera, gotten the word out better, counteracted some of the information that kind of went a little bit astray in terms of its actualities. And then the last meeting we looked at, whether we believe the functionality, the structure that we have, does it meet the structural needs and the efficiency needs and the functional needs of the fire and police department? And everybody felt that did, but there are some thoughts about, should we just look at just doing the fire station and not doing the police station? And then there was a lot of discussion about that in terms of efficiencies and, cost efficiencies in terms of not having a combined facility where you've got your electrical, your mechanical, your HVAC, all that stuff is, doing that twice is just going to be an incredible cost. But basically, I guess I would say that right now they're feeling very cautious. They're not sure that they want to proceed for a November anything. They're feeling like this isn't gonna fly, but yet trying to figure out how to knock down the $27 million cost to anything meaningful. They did not seem to feel that it would get down anywhere close to this idea of a $20 million facility. So that, is really structurally a challenge, because we've been told the $1,000 or $1,100 per square foot, which isn't changing. I mean, that is the real reality now, and that's actually before tariffs came along. So other than really just chopping off rooms, which, again, it's an office or it's something else. I mean, I guess the notion of combining like a lunchroom or combining showers or combining bathrooms or something like that, that can be done. And that's all part of the tweak that an architect would have done if we'd got to that next step, which we have been kind of stopped at. However, doing that isn't going to change the basic footprint itself. It's the real, structure that's really the big thing. You can still tweak a lot of stuff inside and make it less, but it's not going to be appreciable to millions of dollars worth. And what this cost is that we had prepared, or HKT had prepared for us, I believe, Scott, was 19 or 20 million as the build cost, but then there's a 30% on top of that, which is all of the soft costs, all the OPM, architect, insurance, bonding, blah, 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 everything there. So that's all kind of built in, plus a contingency. So if there's anything that could be reduced, maybe that 30%, we might be able to tweak it down a little bit, but still that isn't going to mean lots of savings of millions of dollars.
Or more clearly call it out, because people bought the building.
Right.
You can't have a building without the total, but that the bricks and mortar are this, and the people who get it done are that amount.
Yeah, I mean, some of those other things that, we can't totally control, but, maybe there's a way to be less than the standard 30%. I mean, possibly there could be some savings there. So they're kind of in a quandary. They didn't come up with any particular thought, but go ahead, Scott.
I think it's interesting because Hamden last night approved their expansion for their fire department, which right now is about 5,000 square feet, and they're adding about 6,000 square feet at a cost of construction costs like $8.5 million, and then soft costs are going to be 11 or 12 million.
For 6,000 square feet.
For 6,000 square feet for an expansion. And they're going to redo like the second floor to keep it but not actually use it. So, I mean, if you take those numbers and then, that's only for 12,000 square feet, which is almost like what we have now. And if you double that for a police station, now you're right around the $24 million. So you take the basis of $1,000 a square foot, and the minimum square footage it is to do any type of functional police and fire department. That's kind of what.
So I think that's the challenge of, do we just say, okay, we're only going to do the fire department, they're in the worst shape, but then, in reality, the police are not in great shape over there too in that facility, and trying to do any kind of retrofit in that facility, renovation, modification, try to make it ADA compliant is going to be lots and lots and lots of dollars that I don't know that we're going to have either. So they're kind of in a quandary. They don't know exactly where to go, so we'll see what the Monday meeting brings, but they just wanted us to realize that they think they're at a standstill in terms of what we told them we wanted them to do, and we need to pick up and give them new direction. And at some point, there'll probably be some member changes, and, when you get a real building committee, in most towns that I've seen, you've got, people that are really, much more qualified than some of us in terms of, real, engineers and architects and other kinds of people that are, people that show up and serve on a real building committee per se. So, and that would, I would think would be when we get to the OPM and architecture point. When we got to that point, that's when perhaps some new faces would come in that would have a lot more technical qualifications to be able to have that input. So that's kind of what I can say, I guess, at this point. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this end, but...
Keep the faith and let us know in particular what you want changed on the charter, because...
Yeah, I think most of this is done.
There's a critical need for a public safety building.
And I do think...
And a police building, and it coordinates with the senior center, and the concept of some commercial economic development of
Yeah.
property. And so it's got to hang together. It can't die on the first turn down.
Yeah. Well, but I guess, what is it that's going to be palatable for the citizens to vote on? And that's the big challenge. And
That means what?
and timing, where, when and where. And
Well, so I mean, on that, it's what is the dollar amount, and I don't think anybody here knows that answer. And, if the overall thought is that, because I don't think the ballot was purely rejected based on cost. I think that might have been an overwhelming piece, but I think some of it was rejected for other reasons than cost. So, okay, I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get a 100% in favor vote. But it is cost. What is that cost number? Where, so, how you do that study, how you break that down. We certainly know the, who was vocal about it, is there doing, somebody doing reach out to that group?
Well, and a
All
couple-
of them, they're all citizens.
and a couple of those folks have come to the Public Safety Building Committee meeting. So there was one or two people, one person, I believe, that came to a Senior Center Building Committee meeting, and then 3 or 4, I believe, that came to the Public Safety Building Committee. So they voiced some opinions at that point. So, and that's fine. I mean, they're open meetings. People are welcome to come and listen to what's going on and ask
Because
questions.
maybe it's the plan that's on the table now, and that's the price tag, and that's what we really need to do. It's just that the general tax base here can't pay for it. So, okay, if there are any, maybe we need to spend time on identifying alternative revenue sources outside of the town, i.e. the state auditor's office for rural community support.
Yeah.
We need this.
I know.
You know we need it. We can't afford 30 million, so you guys got to pay 50% of this.
I know. Unlike, like with the schools or with the libraries where they, the state picks up
Yeah, the MS
45, 50% of the cost. There is no such facility that exists for municipal buildings. And they've been talking about establishing something like that for the old town halls and all these other buildings that need to get renovated.
I think public safety
Has
is
it
the
done?
perfect place to start.
Well-
Not necessarily the town halls, but the public safety,
No, true.
everybody
Yeah,
equally utilizes or has the potential to utilize the police, the fire, the ambulance.
that's right, yeah. And I think that has been, a bill that's been drafted for a couple of years, been floating in the legislature, but it gets talked about, but it never has any funding behind it. So that's been the big challenge with that. So anyway, just to say, if you've got any thoughts, shoot me an email and just, feel free. But we will be meeting on Monday, and maybe we'll have a little bit more clarity about where they think they would like to go on that point. But we would want to pick this up and give the current committee at least some more direction over the next 6 months anyway.
At the risk of being dramatic, if the community cannot see their way to building a proper facility for the police and fire, we need to actively look at regionalizing, and we will not have either department local to town. That is really where we're at. These facilities are in failure. They're a health hazard to our employees. They are not open sufficiently to the entire public. They are not an appropriate way to conduct the business of either department. And we've heard that in detail. So if not this, then what?
Well, and that's it. And a few years ago, the town voted to have 24/7 coverage.
Right.
So we've gone through, we didn't have it before, and this was a choice. Do we want this and don't we? So that's how these departments have created now, to be able to respond to that expectation of residents. But it's a balancing match for sure.
I don't know that any of our neighbors want to pick up the responsibility. Maybe we just sign on with the state police and Acme ambulance and we're all set, right?
Yeah, well,
Not so
if you're
simple.
expected in quick service, I'm not sure I would go that route, but yeah.
That's where I'm going.
So-
All right.
All right, well, so let's just say we'll pick that back up. Thank you. Select Board liaison assignments, and again, this is just for thinking, we usually do have some liaisons, and Scott, if you want to make that a little bigger again. So some of these, I think this is all the current committee assignments, but some of these are just because we're already on the committee. Not everyone needs a liaison. For example, grants technology does not need a liaison. That's just because I happen to be on the committee, or Dan was on the committee. So when there was news, we would, share it. But formal liaisons are really probably more half a dozen committees that really need,
Well,
our
it's-
attention.
Some of those are dictated by bylaw. For example, the select board has has somebody on the finance committee, but they don't vote, right?
Yes, on finance committee,
And
right.
PBPQ,
Yeah, public,
you know,
yeah.
we have a seat on that, and you are a voting member.
You are a voting member on the Policies and Procedures Board, correct.
So I think those where we're either on the board or we have a vote, those, we should fill those. And then the rest should be discretionary and,
Yeah.
you know,
And actually, Public Safety and Senior Center, those are both voting ones as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so those are. Planning Board was just a liaison, I believe, Stephen. You were on it as a Planning Board member, but because you were on as a member, you were our liaison. But we got to figure out if, out of these committees.
And before I came on the select board, we benefited from Dan being an elected member of the planning
Right.
board. So
So a lot of what we've done is
what I
just,
see missing is zoning board of appeals. And
that's never been a liaison one, though. They meet
is
like,
it part of their charter then? No.
I mean, they meet maybe once a year.
Oh, did I get assigned to that?
emergency.
I don't,
forums.
maybe.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything
Thank you.
on a regular basis by any means. They meet
So
as
some of them
needed.
have in their charter that there's XYZ authority
A
for
couple of
select
them do,
board.
yeah. So like, so grants and technology, I don't think we need liaisons. Assessors probably would be good, Board of Health would be good. Capital Committee, I don't think we need a liaison per se. I mean, the liaison is really because,
Well, Capital, you're a voting member. Somehow I got stuck with all the voting
oh, that's
ones.
true, okay. Yeah,
I'm sorry, saddled.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Saddled with all the voting ones.
you are. But like Concom or.
Norris isn't, Hampshire Regional isn't.
Yeah,
And like, for example, on the schools, if, and I have no reason to believe they're not going to, the new administration up there with Dr. Perone and Don, they're going to attend the quarterly finance, FICOM meetings. And as long as that's happening, we'll know what's going on, because the other school committee members over at Norris, if there's an issue, they're all in town, we all know each other. I mean, I'm on that committee for one more year, but if there's a problem, they're going to reach out. And I think the strongest reason for us to have the relationship with all these committees is from the financial impacts. So as long as they're talking with FICOM and we're meeting with FICOM, joint sessions, I think we're hearing what we need to hear.
yeah, and I think a large part, aside from those that have this as voting members, the intent was that there are certain committees that they wanted to feel like they had somebody from select board to reach out to. If they had a particular issue, they had a contact person on select board that was their,
So along those lines,
Liaison,
I'd be
literally.
okay with us being, each one of us being a liaison to something, but that does not mean we're going to every single meeting.
Correct.
It's if you have an issue and you'd like a member of the select board present, this is your liaison to coordinate with.
okay,
And then, yeah, I'll certainly go to
okay,
that
and
meeting.
go to a meeting occasionally, but not.
Or if I
not
can't
a-
make it,
Yeah,
and I know it's a select board issue, I'll find one of my contemporaries here to cover for me.
okay, that might be an idea.
I think that's a fine idea, but I think that we need to engage every committee chair, that there's a new day,
Yeah.
a new way. Again, back to whose charter requires a select board
Right.
member. I think the new housing trust requires, that's how I got both hats,
That you're actually a member of the trust. You're,
as
yes,
the select board.
you are the select board member of the 5-person trust, yes. So
So
you're more
it
than a
should be on the
liaison.
list.
Well, it would be. This wasn't a, didn't exist. This is last year's list.
Mostly, we need the voting members, right? If there's a select board
Right. No, you will be, you are
slot
a voting
in
member.
any committee charter, we need to
Right,
pull those to the top.
yep.
And the liaison role that John just very well described is something different.
So maybe we can
And
highlight.
drop all those to
Can
the
we highlight
bottom.
those? So let's highlight the ones that have voting members, and then that'll kind of solve that. So it would be capital,
Yeah. Capital and QPP were mine.
public, policy and procedure.
Yes.
Both right
You
now,
don't
public
have
safety and
voting
senior center building are both voting. Nothing up above, open space, I don't think so.
No, because you and I ultimately.
Don't think so.
I think it's in their charter.
It might be, it's a delegation, maybe a delegation, we can check that from their thing. Finance,
Finance, you're just a delegate, you're not allowed to vote.
oh, you're not a voting member, right?
The CPA, have a select board member or no?
Master plan is a voting member. Because that takes members from various committees, so. I think that's it, is it?
Yeah.
In terms of voting members? Community preservation, no, I don't think so. Select Board's not a member of community preservation, I don't believe. It would be nice to have a liaison to Concom, for example, just to keep an eye on what's going on, or have them know what's going on.
Right,
But we're not voting
when
members.
you need somebody, we'll
Yeah.
be there, and we may drop into every single meeting.
Okay.
As is our habit.
All right, so maybe what we'll do is we'll just reformulate the structure of this list so we know who's required, it's voting members, have those, and take a look at that at our next meeting. And then, in the meantime, we'll pass this back around, and just, if there's a particular committee, especially Ellen, something that would interest you to be involved in, Dan is going to be leaving us, so if you'd like to take up...
I was looking at his too.
Huh?
I was looking at community preservation.
Yeah, so-
And conservation would be my interest.
Okay, conservation and which one?
The community preservation and
Okay,
conservation.
all right, that's good, okay, fine. So I think that's the kind of thing that, as of, or maybe our next meeting, we can kind of hash out a little bit and just see.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear, when you had heard enough that you
Yeah,
found your place in all this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I better find my
right.
place in it.
okay, no, that's good, I think that'll work. So let's pick this up the next time around and solidify it. But I think that's the notion, that those that are voting members, we'll make that formalized, and then others, if we're going to be liaisons, we will be that contact person, but it doesn't mean that we attend every meeting like we've been trying to do and burning everybody out. But, hopefully you can meet once a quarter. You might attend a meeting and just, show a face and, whatever you feel like you can fit into your schedule, basically.
And so there's a third category, isn't there?
Which is that?
It's the case where a select board member is separately elected to a board, and that may be obvious to those who follow town government, but it's not necessarily obvious to the random committee chair that, they have two different hats. And to be comfortable which hat they're wearing.
Yeah, right. No,
When I
that's
go to the housing authority now, I'm not just a community member, I'm an elected member of the housing authority, but I'm not a select board member in that context. So simply keeping track of that.
Yeah.
Dan has been an elected member of the planning board.
Right.
Appointed to the Concom. We make all those appointments.
Right.
Those transition.
Yeah, okay. No, that's valid. Good point.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. Scott, conference room
Oh, yes.
furniture stuff.
So the most important topic for the night. These chairs are not great, and if we ask volunteers to sit here for 3 or 4 hours and they develop a lower back pain, I don't think we'll be able to retain many volunteers over the years. So we do have a little bit of money in the budget for chairs. I would recommend at least 6. But no less than 5, no fewer than 5. So I just did some Amazon, depending on what style you would like, and I can kind of shop around. But we have a mesh style. We have a fixed arm style, and then we have a. I would probably recommend just a mid-back executive chair, which is a little bit. Something like that, but these are actually a little bit better than what that one is. That's a Staples special. So
I like the mesh background. It's breathable.
With the fixed arms or the other one?
Yeah, I'm there.
Is that, these are all adjustable anyway, right? Yeah.
So that's 109, give or take, and discounted.
And there's
Is there
some-
enough to buy 7?
Well, yeah, because there's some committees, so like, community preservation is bigger. They're like at least 7 people, I think. So,
I'm just saying we have 7 around here right now.
yeah,
yeah, we would have enough. I think there's like $1,500.
I mean, for this room, not for the second floor.
Right. Yeah.
so maybe seven chairs worth or something like that. Does that do your mid-back idea or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be something like, it's like similar to this style, but it's mesh instead of that, so. And these are good with that one. A little bit bigger than what these things are too, so. If you like the mesh style, we can always return them if you don't like them.
Sure.
Amazon's got a pretty good return policy.
All right. Do we need to vote on that, or just give you our okay?
The line item that you're going to attach this to, is it an appropriate line item to buy these chairs?
It's the chair line item.
Well, I don't know about that.
Oh, it is.
But then, no, you don't need it. The money's in the account.
Yeah.
It matches the expenditure line. Go for it.
I move approval for the purchase of 7 chairs at final selection to be determined by the town
And there is
administrator.
one.
Second.
I'll have to find it.
All
It's
right.
$1,500.
Whereabouts? Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely, I remember putting in the budget, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we had put money aside, I thought, last year when we budgeted. Okay, here a motion and a second. John and Stephen, all those in favor of having Scott go ahead and choose some chairs here, probably looking at that one with the mesh background? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Go for it. Thank you. All right, 250th, oh, sorry, was there anything for the upstairs?
Depending on how much we have left, I was gonna get some smaller portable conference tables that we could essentially, let me just bring it up really quick here.
What happened to the big round table that was up there? Is
It's
that,
still in there. It's just rolled into the attic.
okay. When that doesn't fit too many people, I guess, that we had, what, 5, maybe 6 people around it?
So I wanted to get relatively, maybe split it up into, instead of getting 8, maybe 4 this year and 4 the next, but something like this where you can actually arrange it depending on what the meeting is. So you can do if you have like a budget hearing, we can do this style. If you have a joint meeting, you could do this style, or just, regular training exercise, you could do these types.
So it allows you some flexibility to rearrange, kind of a modular sort of thing? Interesting, yeah, okay. Well, maybe let's see how much money we have left and, if we have any left in that line or not by the time we're done. Super, all right. Briefly, 250th anniversary, just thanks everybody who came out to the concert. It was finally a Saturday without rain. It was a beautiful night, a little warm, but we did okay. We had about, I don't know, I guess maybe, I'm going to say about 200 people probably. And our musician went from 5 to 8 o'clock with a very short break and did pretty well. Food trucks did well. The Hamels said that they did pretty well on wine sales, and we sold a bunch of merchandise. So I think all in all, it was a good night for everyone. So that was great up at the Vineyard. Beautiful view, and just a nice night. So the next one will be Conant Park. It's a Wednesday night. I believe it's July 21st or 23rd, one or the other. And we're just going to help out with the Lions Club and take over one of the concerts that they were going to do. And this is the Barry Searle and Time Stretchers will sponsor it from the 250th anniversary. So that'll be the next big thing in July. Any other business that can't wait until our July 8th meeting offhand? If not, we do have a couple of minutes here. There's
Motion to approve April 29th, May 6th, May 13th minutes.
Okay, I'll have a second on that. And then
Second.
a couple discussions on just one of them for me. You have a second?
Yes.
Stephen? Okay. On the May 29th one, just some crazy typo type things, I guess.
April 29?
April 29. Just under reports, let's see, it's a page, I can work on it with Scott later, but under reports, I didn't understand, that's on the first page, it's number D. It says restarting, finishing up FY '23-24 audits next week. So I don't know what the restarting part was. And then just below that, it would just be Dr. Perone's with an S evaluation. And then probably the biggest thing is on the top of page 2. The motion was not to approve the right of first refusal, it was to approve the waiver of our right of first refusal. So we need to have the word waiver in there on the top of page 2. That was on the former
Or
road.
simply to waive.
Whichever, yeah, to waive the right of first refusal, correct. So that's at the very top of page 2, Scott? Okay, and I think it's down in the attachments, when she put her notes there, she noted that as a document she received, but it's actually the waiver, not the right of first refusal, but the waiver of the first refusal. So that was all. So I think those are the only comments that I saw that needed some corrections. So with those corrections, we have a motion to approve all three of these, unless anybody else has seen anything. If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, very good. So with those couple corrections, we'll get those done, and then let us go into all of our warrants.
About that. All right. Since my last reading, the following warrants have been approved. W25-11A, the amount is $46.63. W25-45 is $420,029.27. PD 25-46A, the amount is $241,810.35. W25-47, $1,656,201.47. P25-48, the amount is $364,702.51. PD 25-48, the amount is $60,361.08. W25-49, the amount is $2,520,287.73. W25-50, the amount is $586,799.87. PD 25-50, the amount is $97,547.66. W25-51A, the amount is $248,070 even.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, old business, just a little bit in terms of any further information on the FY23 audit. How are things moving from there? We're
Still waiting.
still waiting on the auditors to get us
Yep.
their final language there that, like we said last time, it seems to be much more complicated in their language than what we've seen in the past. Anything on the HMP, hazard mitigation plan? No?
No.
PVPC? ADA door openers?
It's all set. I just need a new master key for Kate to open it, because that door it runs on the master key, so.
Okay.
But that should be all set.
And so if that one is working well, we can go ahead and order them for the bathrooms, and
Yep.
that will be it? Okay, that would be great. I think we need to get those taken care of. And we had, I'm forgetting, did we put money in this year's budget? It was
Capital.
It was it capital or was it ARPA maybe?
It was originally capital, then ARPA, then back to capital.
Okay, all right. Stormwater Enterprise Fund,
Nothing yet.
okay.
Yeah.
And Broadband Committee charge, I do have a draft from the committee, so I think probably our next meeting, I know both Open Space and somebody else has asked for some changes to their charge, their mandate, so we might try to pick these up. I'll see if I can make some headway with what they gave me as a starting point. Other than that, nothing, I'm assuming, on East Street, nothing going on there yet either for the construction there.
No change.
Okay. Our next select board meetings will be July 8th and 22nd, our regular select board meetings. However, we do have a Zoom meeting on this coming Monday at 6 o'clock with the Finance Committee just to approve end-of-year transfers. So that will be happening.
Just on that, July 8th, I will be away, so if there's a quorum issue,
Okay,
I can zoom in.
all right.
Easy.
Thank you for that. And Stephen, are you on any of those days? Are you okay?
Oh, I didn't bring my up-to-date calendar, but I think I've already entered them in my
Okay, all right.
calendar, so.
Okay, so with that, we will be moving into executive session and not coming back. The reason going into executive session is per MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, highway superintendent, and town accountant.
So moved.
Okay, so
Second.
we'll currently adjourn at regular session here at 7:30 and take a 2-minute break, and we'll start with the executive session.